So where does safeness dwell, and how do we shift into that? What does it feel like when we get there?
Well, I think this is crude and it's probably wrong, but I'll say it anyway. I think safety is all about the regulation of the sympathetic nervous system, and I think safeness is primarily vagal. But that's probably vastly too simplistic, but it's a useful beginning. To think about safety is about how you regulate the degree to which your threat system is being stimulated, whereas safeness is the degree to which you're able to explore and grow and have freedom and develop and have positive affect and stuff like that. But those are probably quite crude, simplistic distinctions, but they can be quite useful. So safeness is much more about the freedom to the secure base. Um, Whereas safety is about keeping, making sure that all the threats are sorted. So you need safety. I don't want people to think for a moment
Mm.
that safety is important. It's very important if it's contextually appropriate. But it's then that other positive affect, that sense of engaging the world, and as you say, the flow when you're climbing, and you're not really in yourself. You're in the action. You're in the moment. That all that is to do with feeling safe.
Yeah, the threat system is up-regulating, I guess, in some ways. Sympathetic nervous system, perhaps. And the safety seeking is about trying to create a circumstance where we can feel less of that upregulation. Whereas safeness is more about a feeling of calmness, composure, safeness, but also things like curiosity, playfulness, exploring, and there's a social element to it. What are the specific types of social signals, or those interpersonal aspects that can sometimes really promote a sense of social safeness?
Yeah, so obviously it starts off, doesn't it, in the attachment system, when the baby first encounters the love and affection of a parent, because love and affection are very important in close relationships. I mean, we were talking about love earlier, but in close relationships, particularly attachment relationships, love is very important. And we know that when mum and baby are attuned in their sense of connectedness, they actually are attuning their vagus nerves as well. Their vagus nerves are tuning in with each other. So that's very important. And the voice tones and the friendly face and the experience of affection coming from the other is a very powerful signal to the vagus nerve that you are safe. I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm going to be a resource for you. I'm here to play with you. I'm going to guide you, blah, 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 all that stuff. So the attachment aspect is crucial of the experience of the other as protecting you, but also facilitating you and as a source of a positive experience. And that is also important for play. And in fact, there was a brilliant conference here about 3 years ago on play, talking about the role of play in children and how play has to be interpersonal. And a lot of this play now on computer games is robbing children of these interpersonal interactions, of the smiling and playful interactions that they have. So play is extremely important, and that sense of positive affect that's associated with that social sense of connectedness, that is it's a type of positive affect which is fundamental to well-being, I think. And if you, as you know, there's a difference between people who have been abused physically versus sexually, and there's also a difference between children who have been and people who've been neglected. Children who are being neglected and grow up, these are often people who are, when they get depressed, they're struggling. They don't really know what they want to do. I don't know. Do you have any prejudice? I don't know. Do you ever play? No, not really. They they're sort of, they haven't had that explorative, the capacity to explore and have preferences, and I want to do that, and that's great, and I can get fun of that's never been stimulated for them. Right? So they're just these sort of very quite flattened people. They're just for inwardly sort of dead, really.
Mm.
They're not, they don't have that fear dynamic that the abused people tend to have, but they just have that sort of, and they can be quite tricky, and trying to support them into exploration, feeling safe to have preferences, to make decisions, to be assertive, that can take a bit of time.
Mm. I did an interview with Graham Music
Yeah, that's
um,
good.
on his concept of resparking. And he presented last year, I think, at the CMF conference.
Yeah,
But he was really making that distinction between, those who've experienced a more fear-based trauma versus those perhaps who've experienced neglect, and the way that this really presents quite differently. But that's certainly the sort of $64 million question, isn't it? Like, well, it's for the person who perhaps hasn't felt safe in that deeper sense of safe and secure
yeah.
attachment, and the $64 million question is how to help them get there, like how to kind of find or help them to find a
Well,
path to cultivating that sense of safeness.
I think it's a great question because a lot of what we do is talk with clients and explain to them, tell them about these different systems and how they might be working. What do they think about that? Does it seem like for you, you've never really been able to develop your explorative system? You haven't really had anybody that would encourage you with positive affect. You'd say to the client, you talk to me that maybe your mum was depressed, so she didn't really engage with you with fun and joy. And they can say, yeah, if they can begin to, yeah, that's sort of describes how it is for me. They say, okay, would that be something you'd be interested in doing? See if there are ways in which we can help you to begin to stimulate these areas that have never had a chance to. And so you kind of start to layer up. And I mean, you're very good at this because you do a lot of motivational interviewing. So it's that sort of helping them become motivated, to take an interest, to become curious, and you do very simple things like helping them distinguish between music they like or the food they like, or do you prefer savory versus sweet? Well, I don't really know. Okay, well let's have a look at that then. Let's just start off very simply. Do you like to get into cold sheets at night or warm sheets at night? Or just finding simple areas where they can start to make preferences of like and dislike. That can be the beginning of them starting to this process of exploration. And of course, exploration requires that they are beginning to feel safe in how they explore. And it's okay not to like this, but to like that. All of that stuff. So it's a simple, whereas abused people, that it's not quite, it's different to that because they are much more into the issues of safety and so on. Whereas the neglect for people are not really, it's not that. It's the drive system is just doesn't function. And the threat
Mm.
is less the threat system and much more just don't get turned on by it. You see what I mean?
Yes, for those who experience kind of the neglect, I guess, and have that more flat experience of life now, it's sort of little steps to build something that they can relate to about preferences and liking or disliking and making choices or feeling safe really to make choices. Actually, I do prefer getting into cold sheets or whatever it might be. But for the person though who has experienced more fear-based or perhaps shame-based traumatic experiences, then it might be more about habituation. There's a habituation aspect to it. It's still small steps, still trying to do the exposure, but the mechanism is more of a habituation mechanism or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. There is a complication to this, and you spot it, which is in the feminist literature, there is a thing called silence. Jax, I think, wrote about it, called silencing the self, which women can be more prone to. They get pushed more into submissive, compliant positions, where again, the issue of their own preferences and assertiveness can be difficult for them, and helping them to become more assertive and remember a case very, very early on. It was sad, really. The couple were quite close, but she was quite she was a people pleaser, very much a people pleaser. And so, whenever it came to sexual things, it was always about him, initiating and so forth. She never initiated. She never showed any preference. She just said, everything's fine, everything's fine. And in the therapy, he said, I think my wife loves me, but, I really don't know because she never has any preferences. She'll do what I ask her to do, but does she love me? I just don't know. And that was such a tragic, and that really surprised her. And he said, because you never have any preferences, you just do what I want. I don't know whether you do it. And there was a very moving discussion between them. And it's all about this, as a people pleaser, the suppression of the self, because I'm not allowed to have preferences. I'm not allowed to explore my own sexuality. I'm not allowed to explore my own preferences in art or music, whatever. I just have to go with what other people want. That, for those individuals, it's quite a movement to help them start to think about their own preferences, their own bodies, their own desires, their own wishes, their own. It can take a bit of time.
Because I assume that people pleasing is more in that safety seeking system.
Yeah, yeah,
To
that's
feel
right. That's right.
safe,
That's right.
to have a preference, or to make a suggestion, or to lead a little bit, that feels scary.
See, I can feel safe with you, yeah, because I'm doing what you want. So I'm pleasing you, I'm pleasing you, I'm pleasing you. You're going to be okay, right? But I can't be free to do that. I'm not free to be me. I'm not free to discover me. I'm not free to discover or grow or flourish. I can only, I can only feel okay, provided you're okay with me and that I'm pleasing you.
So it's safety and not safeness.
Yeah, that's the safety. Gives